the strongest wizard of all, reincarnates years in the future in search of even greater power but ends up falling as a weak boy with the weakest coat of arms. But what the hell is a coat of arms? Calm down, you'll understand. The story begins with our protagonist defeating a dragon with a single blow and leaving a crater in the place. The animal is strong SLK, maybe not strong enough, at least not for him, who, when looking at his hand, says that his coat of arms has reached its limit and not there was a way for him to get stronger than that. He says that there are 4 coats of arms and his is the least suitable for fighting. He also says that the coats of arms are randomly given people who are born with no way to change it, so he decides to reincarnate thousands years later in another body to try to be born with the coat of arms he wanted, the coat of arms of combat. The scene cuts with him already reborn and grown up taking a ride with a merchant. He says he was excited to enter the school of magic soon, but a merchant, he replies that with that coat of arms in his hand this would be difficult. Soon a giant tiger appears and before he could do anything he is defeated by the protagonist, leaving the frightened merchandise on. After arriving in the city he sees a weapons store and decides to enter. There he finds Alma, a girl who was desperately asking the blacksmith there to make a new weapon for her friend who lost hers. He asks for the description of the sword and she responds saying that it was a great and light sword, enchanted in such a way. However, the blacksmith says that it would be very difficult to do that, so the prota himself proposes to do it, saying that despite not having the best coat of arms for spells, to enchant a sword would be a piece of cake. He and the girl sit at the table. She introduces herself to him saying her name, Aura, and he responds, Matthias. A blonde girl with blue eyes enters the weapon shop and Matthias is delighted with her beauty. He makes a very rough presentation to her and she too. The scene cuts with the blacksmith delivering the sword ready for Matthias is so stolen that it takes a few seconds to enchant the sword and impresses everyone for not having verbalized any enchant. The scene cuts to combat training at the Magic Academy where Matthias managed to enter. When it's his turn from him, he discovers that this time who would face him would be a school teacher, and after a short battle that teacher is defeated. The anime shows another test happen. This time the students had to hit with magic all 5 targets in front of them. After casting a spell, Matthias understands that the little girl named Luri was not using conventional magic. She was using enchantments because her coat of arms allowed this. Enchantments are like spells or spells that do not depend on the user being very skilled. However, he says that this is a weak magic without much power and also horrible to be used in combat for leaving the target vulnerable while reciting the incantation. He says he expected this type of magic to be extinct, but no, these days the best coat of arms for magic combat is called Glory's coat of arms, which is her coat of arm. As for the 4th coat of arm, the combat coat of arms is considered the weakest coat of arm. Wasn't that the coat of arms he wanted? Yes. In the old days it was the bravest coat of arms, but nowadays it's the weakest for whatever reason. When Matthias's turn comes, he says that with his coat of arms it would be difficult to cast a spell that hits that far, so he decides to use an area spell to hit the targets, and after blowing everything up he looks like a fool saying that he exaggerates. The scene cuts with a speech by the principal in the schoolyard. After the speech the principal calls Matthias to his office, and when he gets there the principal says he knew of everything he did at school and that it wasn't normal for a mere child of a beaver to be so powerful, and asks his cooperation with one thing. Before saying what, Matthias asks why the school still uses incantations with recitation when the without recitation are much more powerful. The director says that he agrees with him, but the incantations without recitation were abandoned a long time ago and there is no one in the kingdom who knows how to use it. This is the academy, is the branch of a larger one that was in the capital, and the cooperation that the director asks is for Matthias to teach everyone in this academy to use magic without recitation for them to use in the interschool magic tournament, and thus prove to the main academy that this type of magic is better and should be taught. The scene cuts to the field of training with the teachers announcing that from today Matthias would be the instructor of the students and would teach them how to use magic without reciting incantations, and that's exactly what he does, managing to prepare the students in time for the interschool tournament. On the day of the tournament, Luri was hoping there wasn't any magic chosen. Matthias asks what that is and she replies that they are geniuses in the use of magic at the main academy, and that every year the second academy lost was because one of them appeared. Matthias detects that yes, he had won and that he had 10 times more magic than him, and Luri, hearing this, scares him, saying that he is comparable to that of a demon. Matthias asks if the demons are still existed and she replies that yes, and that they are the greatest enemies of humanity. When it is his turn to fight, he realizes that he fell against the chosen magician from the other academy, but notices that he was a demon who was disguising himself as a human using magic. He defeats the companions of the demon in disguise and is at X1 against him. However, the demon is scared by his great power and starts an incantation before reciting it, which shows Matthias that he only pretended to recite the incantations, but in fact he didn't need to. None of the demon's attacks worked against him, and Matthias realizes that it was the demons that infiltrated the main academy over the years that made magic without recitation fall by the wayside and made the combat crest known as the Crest of Failure. All of that to weaken humanity and the demons to have an advantage over them. Matthias deactivates the magic of this demon, revealing its true form, and the teachers evacuate the tournament. The fight ends with the demo bio trying to flee, but Matthias finishing it with an attack. The story continues with Matthias and the director of the second academy having an audience with the king. He thanks Matthias for his deed, calling him a hero, and offers him a reward. Matthias asks for access to the dungeons and the right to keep what he had inside them. He speaks in thought that the dungeons have the best magic items and kingdoms even fought for their possession, but that nowadays probably no one knows their real potential anymore after the demons infiltrated humanity and passed on wrong magical knowledge to weaken them. The king answers his request and starts talking about another question. He says that the chosen magicians started to appear hundreds of years ago and that the 4 chosen ones of the kingdom fled after that demon and in disguise was defeated. He imagines that the chosen ones were all demons and asks if now that they fled the kingdom was safe, but Matthias says it's the opposite. Probably they were gathering a great force and assumes that they would attack in 3 months. The king is afraid, but Matthias says that it was just a matter of creating a giant barrier around the kingdom and that with the help of the 2 academies they would finish everything in just 1 month. The king believes in him and orders everything to be prepared. In addition, he grants Matthias the title of leader of the fight against demons, and with that title he had access to practically everything he wanted. He enters a warehouse in the kingdom and finds a sword he made in his past life. He takes it to use at the base of the barrier, also takes a necklace he made in his past life that gives more XP to the user for defeating monsters. He decides to explore the dungeon of the kingdom and invites Alma and Luri to form a group with him. They accept and the 3 head to the dungeon below the academy. He explains that though the diversity and strength of the monsters differs at each end of the dungeon, and he says that the monsters on that floor shouldn't be difficult. He walks a little and comes back with a monster in his hand. The coat of arms of Alma is perfect for long-distance combat, and he decides to train her as the archer of the group. Basically, he puts the monster on top of something to serve as a target and teaches Alma to imbue an arrow with magic and shoot it, piercing the monster and killing it. He asks her to do it again and more details of what she should do, and the result is she shoots an arrow that makes a curve, killing another monster. He asks her to go alone to practice until she manages to kill 2 monsters with a single arrow and leaves with Luri to train her as a support since his coat of arms is perfect for enchantments. He uses a super simple magic to break the dungeon wall, and I got resources for her to enchant. With just a few minutes teaching her about enchantments, she can turn the wall dust into valuable ore, and when the soul finds the 2 saying that he can already kill 3 with an arrow, Luri was already managing to create a sword with his enchantment. They then go to another floor deeper and there appear monsters a little more difficult that the 2 working together can defeat easily. That until a wolf that is a much more aggressive monster than the others appears, and with a combination of teamwork the 2 manage to defeat it too. Matthias then makes a protection for them to rest and says he will continue down the dungeon, going to the 25th floor, which leaves them amazed since they say that the lowest anyone has ever gone down was on the 23rd floor, and it wasn't just one person but a group of 30 men under the protection of Gaius, the god of magic. But at the hearing that name, Matthias says it can only be a coincidence because Gaius was his name in his past life. He goes down to that floor to get the ore he wanted and notices that 1 floor below his was the boss of that dungeon. He goes down, face him, and discover that the boss was a giant snake with a poison so strong that it is capable of leaving the air toxic. I won't even show much of this fight because the animation is terrible, so let's just jump at him coming back until 2 and talking who defeated a big monster down. Leaving the dungeon, they go to a nearby guild wanting to sell what they got, and that includes the serpent's head that upon seeing it, the guild receptionist screams. On the way back he says he got 750 gold coins and wanted to share the profit between the 3. While they discussed it, Matthias and the 2 feel a magical power approaching the gym fast. There were 2 demons and according to him one of them was very weak, and Matthias leaves him for the 2 to fight, getting against the strongest that great surpassed the power of the first demon he faced in the tournament. Matthias arrives with a surprise attack on the weakest demon, who is soon distracted by the arrows of the soul and goes after them. The strongest demon then begins a battle against him. Matthias dodges his attack, saying that he would die instantly if he was hit. He creates spheres that absorb magic and uses it to reflect the demon's attack on himself. However much he tried in every possible way, he could not recover the overwhelming advantage that Matthias had, and the result of the fight you can imagine. right? He easily defeats this demon while his partner was having trouble even getting close to Alma and Luri, and seeing that Matthias was there he wonders where the other demon was, but he says he defeated him. The demon takes flight and decides to run away. Matthias asks Alma to throw a magic arrow at him because he couldn't reach the demon with him flying, and after the arrow hits his wing, Matthias reaches him and finishes him off. They have one more audience with the king, and Matthias asks access to as many dungeons as possible as a reward. He realizes that there was a demon watching them through a spell that works as if it were a TV and casts a shock spell on that demon that causes high damage to it and makes the spell cease. The king asks if the demons were spying on humanity and gaining information about their plans all this time, and Matthias says yes. He says that by magic power he knows where the demons are, and together with Alma and Lyria decides to go there. However, it was too far to go on foot and her teleportation magic didn't reach that far, so they catch a ride with an old friend of Matthias, a dragon. When she gets up, Matthias asks her to stop because she was going too fast. She apologizes but says he was just flying as fast as humans can handle like he asked, but he couldn't base himself on Gaius, so he decided to base himself on his friend as speed to fly. Luria and Alma comment if she was referring to the god of magic Gaius and the god of the sword Roitor, and Matthias says in his mind that the gods they worship have the same names as him in his past life and his friend. Why is it? I don't know. I just know that the three are on their way to the village where the demons were hiding. The scene cuts to Matthias jumping from his dragon and cutting a demon in half with a single attack. They had already arrived at the village where the demons were hiding, and he says that he got two magic signatures there, one from one of the chosen magicians of the kingdom and another from a demon even more powerful than the last one he faced. His dragon Iris makes a very wrong landing because he hasn't flown for a long time and ends up alerting their position, so much so that when they enter a room Matthias he says that the demons were invisible and hiding their presence, so it was not possible to see them. He asks Luri to notice if there was any point with less magic in the room, and she says yes. In the corner Matthias says that it was there that he was hiding. Alma then shoots him with an arrow, who complains about having been found, saying that his hiding place was perfect, only if it is perfect to be found. By the way, Matthias was already becoming famous because the demon recognizes him but calls him of an imposter because the real Matthias wouldn't be able to get there so fast, and the two start to fight. However, this fight doesn't last long even though he was ignoring Alma's and Luri's bow and arrow attacks. Soon after, the poison he had on the arrow starts to take effect and he is slow, forcing him to use a transformation in which he exchanges his life in the long run for power, and even so he takes an arrow in the face and dies after Matthias deceives him and weakens him with magic. After the fight he asks the two to leave because he would deal with the other alone. He breaks 3 magic stones and he explains that the effect of breaking them would make the demon that was invisible show himself. He says he was too high of the other in power level, and with just one attack it rips Matthias's arm, but he didn't seem desperate with that or even at a disadvantage. In fact, Matthias had already applied a healing magic on his body before the battle, and that's why his arm has regenerated. In addition, he says that he did an analysis of his magic power and all the following attacks do not hit Matthias, who tells him that he let his arm be cut on purpose and soon after hits him with a blow that causes a considerable damage to him. He then says he has no choice but to use his full power, but Matthias cancels this transformation, which leaves him surprised because according to him he didn't have any nullification spell that would work against his transformation. Matthias explains that next to the cut he made on his hand he injected something to make his magic go out of control and he explode, and that's exactly what happens, making him turn into a giant crystal, a crystal that Matthias explains is a pillar of the vein of the dragon. He continues explaining that the dragon's veins are a pillar of magic that run through the earth, that is, it is a thing with a lot of magical power, and given the spell made in the crystal, he imagines that the demons want to invoke several hordes of strong monsters from the dungeons to this world with the intention of attacking the capital. The two are disheartened when they hear this, saying that they should evacuate the city, but Matthias tells them not to worry so much because with that explosion he changed the radius of appearance of the portal with the monsters for about 10 kilometers from the capital. They decide to return to the capital, and on the way the dragon asks what she would do after leaving them there, and after thinking a little, he invites her to join the academy he was studying because that way they would always stay together. She accepts, and after arriving she uses her power to transform herself into a human. Then Matthias introduces her to the director of the academy and asks him to accept her as a student. He replies that he would accept, but she should pass the academy test with an almost perfect grade. He asks if he could accompany her on the test just in case, and he allows it. He says that he needed to accompany her to ensure that she does not accidentally destroy the academy with her dragon power. The anime continues to show her taking the tests of academy admission and destroying everything for not being able to control her strength right in the target, hitting test she couldn't hit at all, so her solution is to explode everything with a magic attack, thus destroying the targets and almost the entire training camp. The episode ends with the director approving of her, despite his face of astonishment at her power.